Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone to Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my first after Christmas episode of The Bend. I'm so happy that Dr. Kate Crumley said yes when I randomly emailed her out of the blue and agreed to be on this show with me, because I met Kate, probably at some AHA functions and then back and forth with some friends. So we've known each other for quite a while now. But I want to introduce her because Kate graduated from NC State University, as did I. No DVM for me, but she had one. And then she also holds an MS degree in biochemistry from UNC Chapel Hill. Now, if you are from my neck of the woods and Kate's neck of the woods, you realize that UNC and NC State are arch rivals in everything. And so I think one of her big challenges and changes in life was moving from Chapel Hill to NC State and surviving that traumatic event. Let's put it that way. She managed her career path, includes 7 years of mixed practice experience, companion animal medicine and surgery, practice ownership in the roles of partner and sole owner. She has been active with AHA beginning in veterinary school, has participated in a number of volunteer roles, as well as serving on the board of directors and as AHA president 2014 to 2015. She is passionate about top-notch veterinary medical care, about developing people into leaders who can make their practices thrive. She founded Heartwood Animal Hospital, which serves the rural North Carolina community of Youngsville, just north of Raleigh. She built the hospital from the ground up, opening the doors in 2000, and has always been an advocate for team development. So this is something Kate and I really have in common. We believe in developing our people. Her team players have advanced through AHA's distance education veterinary technician program, with Dr. Kate being their preceptor. She sold her practice in 2019. Now, this is the cool story, is that Kate sold her practice to a young veterinarian that I met when he was the president of Virginia Tech's VBMA and asked me to come and be a speaker for their group. And I was so impressed with him. And the next thing I knew, he was buying Kate's practice. And so I think it is a proof concept that this is a very small community in veterinary medicine. Now, Kate works now with Blue Heron Consulting Group, who are also good friends of mine. And she is in charge of the medical team on this consulting group. Her goal as part of the Blue Heron team is to inspire veterinarians to feel fantastic about their legacy. Now, outside of vet med, she enjoys road biking, gardening, traveling, and listening to audiobooks. And her husband and she live in the back roads of North Carolina with their dogs, Spock, Bucky, and the cat, Nico. And we're a little concerned about dogs barking, but hey, this is vet med. So if dogs didn't bark in our conversation, we would not know how to have a conversation. So thanks again, Kate, for joining me on the show. I'm really excited that you made some time. I know your schedule is packed, and I'm glad you squeezed me in.
Well, thanks, Debbie. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. You do know, we have known each other for a long time, and you've been friends with Jimmy and the Blue Heron group. But anybody who knows you, which is pretty much everybody, you know everybody. You're a good person to know. Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. I laugh in my during COVID, my social butterfly wings have been clipped, and I was having really sad issues because I wasn't out getting to see all the people that we laughingly call our conference family, right? When we go out and We go to these conferences, we know there's people there we're excited to see, and we've missed connecting with each other. So Kate, I want to start with my typical question, which is, what was your original goal as a kid? Because you told me briefly it was not to be a veterinarian.
That's right. Yeah, I've always been interested in medicine. And so in science and math and all that stuff. So I thought that I would be a human physician. And, what you do to get there, you study and you make good grades and all of that. And as I got through undergraduate, first, second, up to junior year, that was the career path and the goal. And a couple of things happened in the junior year. One, the competition between people who were my friends started becoming really cutthroat, and it was not something that I was enjoying. And the real kicker was visiting the medical schools, and I had an epiphany. I think it was at Emory University, actually, that I don't really like being around sick people. So, being a physician probably wasn't a good idea for me. And that's when I did a pivot and said, okay, let me do biomedical research. And that's when I went to biochemistry, and then went from biochemistry to graduate school, thinking I was going to pursue a PhD in biomedical research. I learned a lot there, and I had another sort of epiphany when I had to write my first grant. And I realized that I was going to have to write grants every single year of my career in order to justify my existence, basically. And it was not a fun experience. The
I heard
research is
that's
good.
fairly intense, that
It
the grant writing and then the anxiety about not getting your grants, and you're in the middle of a research project and your funding is gone.
Absolutely, yeah. And I came home one day and told my husband that I think I screwed up, because at this time we had just gotten our first Bernese Mountain Dog, and I was all into the research about, it was back before they were cool. Nobody knew in 1985 what Bernese Mountain Dogs were all about. And I told my husband, I said, I think I screwed up. I really should have not gone to graduate school. I should have gone to vet school. And he was big enough support. He said, well, then do it. And I went, wait, you don't understand. It'll be another 4 years. And he said, well, I'd rather have you 4 years doing what you want to do than the next, 30 years of our marriage being miserable. So anyway, so that was one of the,
yeah,
no kidding. Yes, that's
yeah.
probably one of the nicest things he's ever done for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there were two pivots there, two big pivots.
Yeah, my husband did the same thing for me when 2008 hit, and I was laid off from my chief operating officer job. And he said, look, you've been doing consulting on the side. You've always wanted to do it. Just do it. And I went, really? He said, yeah, just I don't know how you start that, but just do it. Well, I didn't know how to start it either. I just, was figuring out on the fly, but yeah, you just do it. And it was a great decision, because I've loved every minute of it ever since. It's just been so interesting, so much fun. So tell me about, your curveball. I'm assuming you just moved right on into vet school fairly easily with your background.
Yeah, that was pretty straightforward. Getting through school was, just like everybody else, you plug through, and some things are hard, and it's a real shock to the system how much they want you to absorb and how much time. And yes, and then, coming out of school, another big surprise, and I suppose this is sort of a curveball. I never intended to work with large animals, although I thought exotics were pretty cool, but of horses and cows and all that. Not my thing. Until I got to senior clinics. And it's like, oh, this is kind of fun. This is fascinating. Look how we deal with these things. And felt unprepared, but sat down with two of my well-respected large animal folks, clinicians, and said, look, this hasn't been my path. And this is back in the day, there weren't any tracks, right? You did it all.
You just did it all.
You just did everything. And then you came out and went your merry way. But I talked with these two doctors, and I said, I'm not terribly well prepared, but I'm actually really enjoying this. Do you think that somebody with my background could do mixed practice? And they were very encouraging. I mean, and credit to them for saying the school. They're like, yes, you've been through our program because we have the farm on site. You have the good basics, and and we're here for you. So that was another surprise that set me looking for a whole different type of practice, and really glad I did it. Really glad I did it. There's a lot of dark nights and the back end of Black Cows and the Black Knight, but but yeah, there's something about being being out there on your own, and you don't have all the support, and you have to actually think on your feet. I think it just makes you a better doctor.
I used to ride in the farm call trucks with my mixed animal doctors, and we had 4 in the practice. And I said, you know what? I know why you guys do this, because this is great. We were out riding through the country most of the time. We would go to barns and vet 100 head of horses and only see the handlers and never see an owner. And it was pretty easy work. I mean, it was pretty, let's say, low stress work compared to having that client staring over your shoulder all the time. I mean, we did get into some challenges with some very high end horse reproduction stuff that was frighteningly expensive when you talked about some semen implantations and things like that. But for the most part, it was great, and the farmers were great, and we just we had a guy down the road who had an ostrich farm. So this is one of the most interesting things that I encountered. And I love to ask my students, do you know how to restrain an ostrich? And they go, no. And
I do.
said, yeah, you do. You throw a tube sock over its head, it'll just stand there. So we had the ostrich farm, but I've talked to some veterinarians on this show and just out in the world and asked this question because you mentioned tracking. And some of the veterinarians I've talked to said, I think it would have been sad to have tracked, because I really enjoyed the mixed animal. I enjoyed learning about all the animals. And I think it made me a better veterinarian, a well-rounded veterinarian. I'll get out there in a minute. But there is so much to learn comparatively. I think from, I started in 1985 and we just gave prednisone and and tip dogs. Life was pretty dang simple back then.
You had Clavamox, amoxicillin, and Trimet sulfa. That were your antibiotics. That was it.
Yes. Yep. And anything that wouldn't eat would get Winstrol V. My practice owner called it the silver bullet. Yep. So give them some steroids, and I tell you what, it'll make a cat eat no matter what. Yeah. So Winstrol V was our friend. But yeah, things have changed so dramatically, and there is so much to learn. When I think back over my career, which started in 1985, and I look at how simple things were in practice. And then now I have a general practitioner, actually 2 of them as clients, who have CT scans in their general practices. And you think, wow. Yeah, wow is right. That's just incredible medicine. And I think getting the public to appreciate that is sometimes our challenge, because they probably like those days when we just gave steroids and an $18 shot and sent them out the door. I don't know. Some do,
Some
some don't.
folks maybe, yes.
Mhm.
Some folks, well, and then every every community has that doctor who is, you know, elderly and still practices the way, 85 medicine,
Mhm.
1985
It's
medicine.
true.
And they will have a really strong following in the community from similar demographic people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's of course, and you and I both, we talk about marketing our practice, but knowing your brand. And of course, you've worked with AHA, and like I did, for we were AHA accredited practices for 23 years of my career. I worked with AHA standards, and I absolutely confess to people that I'm a medicine snob. And
Hmm.
that's the way I look at things. I don't have a pet at this moment, but when I did have pet, I wanted nothing but the best for it, and I wanted a standard of care. So I'm not saying that you have to be an AHA practice to practice to high standard of medicine, because there are a
Hmm.
lot of practices out there that do it without going through the accreditation. But my
Right.
philosophy is, if you're going to do it, you might as well get the kudos for it, right? Just go ahead and
Yeah.
get
Well,
accredited, because you're already doing the
sure.
work, and you might as well get the credit for it and market the crap out of it. So in making this change, Kate, I mean, here you were, on the track to PhD, switched over to veterinary medicine, got through vet school, um, and then you went out and you were working for someone in practice, I'm assuming, when you got out.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. So I worked with Dodd Davis. We were in so northern Franklin County, which is pretty rural. It's still pretty rural up that end of the county. I'm on the south end of the county, and we're just barely out of Wake County at this point, which is, Wake Forest, Raleigh. Um, so it's a lot more suburban where we are now. But yeah, and yeah, like I said, yeah, I was working for somebody else. The medicine was awesome because you saw everything. And my boss had no interest in seeing any exotics, so anything unusual came in. That was me. I got to do the ostrich farm visits because he said it's a lethal overgrown chicken, is what he called them. So
A good
he said,
description. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He said, I'm not going to have disemboweled by an overgrown chicken on my epitaph. So, uh, but yeah, you learn a whole heck of a lot, different techniques. You do have to think on your feet. You have to get really creative. Back then, we didn't have referral options. And I remember very clearly one of the associate doctors at the time. Um, I had a patient that had been hit by a car. We saw our own emergencies too, because there wasn't anybody else to see emergencies.
Mhm.
So this poor dog had been hit by a car. A Good Samaritan and picked him up and brought him in. And heck, I mean, I ended up putting a chest tube in this dog. And you talk to students now, and I've been out of school maybe a year. You talk to students now, and they're like, "You put in a chest tube? What, by yourself in the middle of the night?" I'm like, "Well, nobody else was going to do it. The dog
What
was
were
going
the
to die."
options? Exactly.
Yeah, right. And I remember this family and giving them really poor prognosis, and they said, "Well, do what you can." And they were good Sams, but they said, if he's going to survive, he's going to have to be tough. Toughest thing I can think of is a gator, and so I'm going to call him Gator. Gator recovered, and Gator lived. I saw him for years and years and years. I mean, he was in his teens when we let him go, but I remember Dr. Wendy just saying, "Isn't it amazing what you can do when you have to,
Exactly.
when you can't refer it, there's nobody else who's going to do it." Um, you go back to your school and you say, "Okay, here's, they told me how to do it. Now let's give it a try.
I can't even
Um,
begin to tell you how many times I watched my practice owners and associates get into something challenging, open up Bojarab and
yeah,
sit there and say, turn the page, to the tech assistant, turn the page, so that they would watch. I'm really going to age myself here. Waltham used to have those old VHS tapes where you could go and preview the different kind of surgical techniques. It was kind of like a continuing education thing that they had done. And so my doctors would go and sit and look at those tapes and watch a surgery being performed and then go do it. And, they were
yeah,
extremely successful. I don't think we ever had one fail, of all those
yeah,
different, like major orthopedics and splenectomy, you name it. I mean, they just did it. Um,
yeah.
so then you decided that you wanted to be your own boss, huh?
Pretty much. Well, after my daughter was born, I think I had been in practice for 3 years at that time. I approached Dr. Davis and I said, I'd like to be a partner. Um, I'd like to be an owner, and I'd like to be a partner. And he said that he was up for that. And because if I probably would have left and either started my own or bought something, or I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea how to do it, but knew that I wanted to be part of the practice. And yeah, so then you have all the fun. Then you learn the steps. Then what do? Right? You have the fun of, okay, well, here's the things you have to think about. And I had nobody to help me at that point, really. And Dr. Davis had never done it before either. So we were the two of us sort of stumbling along, reading books and talking to, his uncle was an attorney. So we were talking with him, and, um, we made it all work. And I'm looking back now and I'm like, if, if there had been a, if there had been a Blue Heron, or if there had been a Debbie Boone to have guided both of us,
Mhm.
I mean, I think we would have had a better deal. And I think the practice would have certainly grown a lot faster. I mean, we did okay. I mean, we grew fast enough that we said, hey, let's build a second building in the other end of the county, um, which is where I went to work, right? We split, not the partnership at first, we split. He stayed in his established practice and I went to the new one. And, it was fun to, kind of fun to build. It's fun that when it was built, the building was, had its own set of challenges, but
Yeah, I've built some practices from the ground up and coached some clients through that. And the first thing I say is add a third to whatever they tell you. If it's going to be
mm-hmm,
a year, it's going to be a year and a half or a year and 3 or 4
mm-hmm,
months,
yep,
because something always they're always, I think contractors are perpetually optimistic when they should be pessimistic in their um, estimates. But of course, then the other thing that is the blight of any building is change orders. And this is the other
mm-hmm,
thing I tell people who are looking to build. Think about everything. Walk through your head, put tape on the floor, make sure your rooms are big enough, add more electrical outlets. You'll never have enough outlets and
that's
storage.
true, yeah,
And because making those changes once the walls go up is really, really expensive. And you do
yeah,
not want to do it then. But I
right,
love construction. So one of my favorite places on earth is a hardware store. So I really do like the process of building things. And I think that's maybe that comes from my husband. He's been in the flooring business for 50 years, and it, he had me helping him lay floors when we were young, and doing all kinds of stuff. So there's hardly any project that we won't handle. And now we're too old to do that stuff. It's it's crazy. It is crazy. Now we can pay the man. That's right. From the old Andy Griffith show, when ain't be, pay the man. That's what we learned to do. Pay
yeah,
the man. Yeah.
yeah,
So, but you ended up owning your own practice like by yourself, right? So, what was
yes.
the scary part of kind of breaking away and being your own boss? Because I think that's a leap that a lot of young veterinarians are very nervous to make. And, you and I both know that that is the way to be independent and pay off your student loan debt and have the life that you deserve as a veterinarian, is to own
Yeah.
your own practice. So how was that? How did you, like, I guess, pull your big girl panties on, take a deep breath and take that plunge?
Well, it came about that one would have been a curveball, because there was the two practices. I mean, Dr. Davis was staying at the practice that he had established, and then we had built the new practice in Youngsville, which is where I was. And so all of a sudden he went from having a practice where basically all the debt was paid to now we have this new place, very expensive, and you're trying to build a clientele, and things don't always, the first year or two is really tough. And after we'd been at it for about 2 years, he basically called me up one day and he said, because our partnership said either one could stop the partnership at any point, we just had to say. And he said, the stress is killing me. I can't deal with it. I need out. And I'll sell you. You can take Heartwood. I'll keep mine, and we'll call it quits. And it was like that was pretty shocking. And I remember taking that call because that was just like a very casual call in the morning one day, and I must have come out of the office and looked white or something, because one of the staff took one look at me and went, "Dr. Crumley, are you okay? Or is everything okay?" And I remember saying, "Maybe not now, but it will be." So I think that's probably the key, Debbie, is to be optimistic enough to say it will be. I don't have to know logistically how I'm going to get from here to there. But if you have a vision that, I knew I wanted to be an owner. I didn't have a problem with being a sole owner. It just sort of fell in my lap a little sooner than probably I would have asked for it. But that, and it worked out well. There are, there's so many mistakes I made along the way. And I guess if you can find the right people to help you, that's probably the biggest thing you can do, because take the leap and then find people to help you. And that's one of the things AHA did for me, was there were so many good people who had been through similar situations and could give advice, or point me in the direction of people with advice. And yes, and then it took a number of years before I found Blue Heron, and then I became one of their clients. And then that was a very focused, very, very focused on how do you improve the health of your practice as a whole. AHA was very, very good at the medicine side of it, and it helped a little with knowing how to do helped a lot with the culture. But the actual nitty gritty of ability there was something missing.
Well, that's because
And
veterinarians don't talk about money, right, Kate?
we don't. It's
No, we don't talk
taboo.
about
You
money.
just don't do that.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
creepy crawly. It makes your skin itch.
Yeah.
And so finding people to help you talk about it and actually look at it, and we don't understand it either. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of the things I do now, which I think is fun when I relate with people, is because a scary thing if you're a doctor, and it was for me for a long time, is that thing that's called a P&L.
You
Oh
mean
my
the thing
gosh,
that
this
most
piece.
veterinarians only look at once a year when their accountant shows it to them?
Yes,
That one.
that thing,
Mhm.
because otherwise it's a piece of paper that stares at you and you don't like the number at the bottom of it, and um, because it's just what it is, and you don't know what to do with it. Um, and so now I get a kick really out of taking it and saying, okay, um, good doctor, take a look at this. What do you see? They see, scary numbers. And I go, this is just exactly what your client sees when you give them their ClinPath report.
Exactly. Hmm.
And what this is the ClinPath of your practice as a business. And once you know how to read this, once you know what numbers are, the kidney numbers, right? Once you know what are the numbers that you can affect and how to affect them, then it becomes a diagnostic tool that you can use to make your practice better. And you just see these people go, oh,
Oh yeah. Oh
well, I can
yeah.
learn that.
I
Yeah.
I
So it's the way
to
to
give
look at
it
it.
the equation I give it is the diabetic cat. And if you only did glucose curve on it once a year, your cat's going to be dead. There's no way to adjust the insulin levels. So you are looking
Mm-hmm.
for anomalies and you're looking for things to adjust, and that things that are out of kilter, just like when you're looking at those chemistry panels. And
Mm-hmm.
that's all you need to think about is just what are my normals? And then what do I need
Mm-hmm.
to adjust? And why are they abnormal? What happened?
Yep.
And if there's an
Mm-hmm.
explanation, I've made the mistake of sometimes getting my routine physical the week after Christmas and having my cholesterol taken. I'm going, I'm not going on Lipitor because I know what I ate last week and that's not happening. So that's a logical explanation of why my personal P&L is out of whack. And so if everybody in your hospital got the flu and everybody had to work overtime and your payroll numbers are out of kilter, okay, that makes sense. But
Uh-huh.
if none of that happened and your payroll numbers are out of kilter, then what the heck's going on and who's riding the clock and who's cheating on their hours and there's something going on there. So it's not as scary as you think. But I
Mm-hmm.
kept thinking about when you said, I wish I'd had somebody. I've had a couple of young veterinarians who've called me, one of them before she even opened her doors to help learn
Mm-hmm.
how to run a budget and her numbers, and the other one had
Yep.
been open 7 months and was
Mm-hmm.
riding basically a runaway horse. And we got that under control. And she went in 1 year to a 3 doctor hospital and from a single solo practitioner that she just unlocked the doors. They're crawling over each other because they need a new building. But when you have people who can explain to these extremely smart people, because that's who this whole profession is full of brilliant people, um,
It is.
they
Yeah,
get
it
it.
is.
They just get it if you're good at explanations and teaching, and which is what you and I both like to do. We just like to teach people how to do this stuff. And
Yeah.
I told young practitioners this, I'd so much rather you call me when you're just early on in this journey than waiting until you're a year from retirement and you want me to help you dig yourself out of a mess that you're in because you don't have any
Right.
profitability and nobody wants to buy your practices. So
Right.
that's almost too late to fix. A year's not going to give you time to fix it. So
A year's not enough. No.
mm-mm, it's not. So obviously, starting a practice like having it dumped into your lap is kind of terrifying. But how did you work through moving forward with that? I mean, how did you just kind of, you made the mention of it's not all right today, but it's going to be all right because we had a plan. So how
Mm-hmm.
did you kind of move forward with this surprise?
Um, well, I'll admit that at least some of it was a little bit reactive, uh, because it was like, well, darn it, my partner never wanted to go paperless, so by golly, we're going to go paperless. And yeah, so we did some things like that, which I guess, I mean, that was a really good decision. It was a really good decision, and it was something that I'd been working toward for quite a while. But actually making it happen that was the catalyst, was that, okay, I don't have anybody pushing back anymore. And that was sort of a, you know, thumb in your nose at somebody. Um, yeah. And then it was just sort of, okay, now, you know, what do? We have a good client base. We have a lot of folks who, you know, were wanting to come to the practice, and let's take care of them. Um, and so, you know, buckling down and just doing the medicine by yourself, that was the fun part. You have to relook at, I think at that point we did have a place to refer after hours emergencies, and so that made a big difference. Being on the Wake County side made it a lot more feasible. There was a period where, um, partly for staffing and just partly because of practice flow, we looked at the cost of being open on, it turned out Thursday was the least active day of the week. And so for a time we said, okay, we're just going to close on Thursdays. And that was very scary, but it worked. Our clients adapted to it. And when eventually we could open back up on Thursdays, it took people a lot of time to go, oh, really? Thursdays? And to come back with us. Putting your head down, you read a lot of books. You go to a lot of conferences. You start changing the CE you go to. Comfort zone CE is not where you need to be if you're going to be an owner. My first experience with that was an AHA conference. I think it was the first AHA conference I ever went to. And the way this exhibit hall was set up, one long side was all practice management stuff. The other long side of the hall, so just across the other set of doors, was all scientific. And I remember very clearly going to the management side, and it was an HR lecture. And I was having all kinds of fun with HR at that point. And there was a big discussion about how do you get staff to accept to wear uniforms when they're used to wearing whatever it is they want. And I had just like this tension headache. It was just like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. And, you know, the bell rings or whatever, and you go across the hall. And I literally walked right across the hall, and there was an upper level neurology lecture. And I realized about 20 minutes in or so, I was sitting back. I had a nice chat with the person next to me. I could tell my blood pressure was down. It was
Totally in your comfort zone, right?
It was all nice. Everything was copacetic. And I'm like, this is not where people would think the easy stuff would
The
be.
easy stuff is, yeah.
So,
well, you know, you go to vet school because you like the medicine and the science of it. And then there's all these people. and I've laughed because it's, well, you know, you'd have actually the perfect practice if you didn't have any clients or any staff, because the medicine is not the hard part. It's the part that you learned. But now the other stuff is all coming into play. And of course, I spend the majority of my time teaching humans how to veterinarians how to communicate well with humans, and successfully getting them to say yes to things that are good for their pets, and also to build culture and practice, because turnover is a killer. And we seem to be really struggling right now with a great shortage of veterinarians and a shortage of technicians. And I'm sure that you are seeing that in the practices that you work with. And I see it in some of the practices that I work with, but in many of them, there's a very stable staff because they've built a culture where people just don't leave. And this is a message that seems to be so difficult to get. And the thing that I've been teaching for many, many, many years, probably 15 now, is communication. And the veterinarians will send their receptionist or they're practice managers, but they won't come and sit themselves in chairs in my class. And
Yep.
I just feel like if
Yep.
they would, so many of their problems would be solved because they would understand what they're doing to
Yeah.
tear down the culture of their practice.
So, I mean, if there's one thing anybody out there is listening that wants to become an owner, I mean, that's it. Go out of your comfort zone, because here's the deal. If I need to learn a new surgery technique, I don't need those Wolfram tapes anymore. I got YouTube, right?
Mhm.
And I don't mind calling a colleague and saying, okay, what do I need to do? Where do I need to look? I got books, I got all kinds of references, and it's very straightforward. I won't say it's easy, but it's straightforward to learn those techniques or to look up something like that neurology lecture I was in. That's very easy to find. I know where to look. When you go to CE, picking the brains of people who know things that you don't know how to do, that is out of your comfort zone, that you can't pick up and easily learn in a book. That's probably the best thing you can do as I don't care what you're going to do. And that's hard, because what you're drawn to is your comfort zone, and you just need to, if that's your goal, right? If your goal is to be an internal medicine specialist and that's all you're ever going to do, well, heck, go to just your internal medicine CEs. If your goal is to be even a little bit entrepreneurial, if your goal is to be a leader in the practice, even if you don't want to be an owner, how do you get the staff to do what you want them to do without them thinking you're an ogre? That's where you go to those communication lectures. And, and the schools are doing better because there's an awful lot more now of at least communication options. The Frank program is really common, but it still can only go so far. And yeah, go do the hard CE. Go do the CE you don't necessarily want to do.
Exactly. Exactly. I I've been giving a class called the Fear Free Human. I sit on the Fear Free Advisory Board, and when I started to take my Fear Free certification, it was I've zoomed through modules 1 through 7 because these were all exactly the kind of reactivity, limbic brain responses that I had been teaching for years to my students about people. Now, when I got to the
Mm-hmm.
lecture number 8, it was all about drugs, and it kicked my butt. It really did, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm not a technician. I'm not a doctor. I've got to learn all these, what do you do with gabapentin? I still don't know, but I passed. And I hear what I
You
was
knew
a
for a little
student.
while.
I was a student until I got to section 8, and then I passed with an 80. So anyway, but
Gabapentin's good. That's all you need to
gabapentin is
know.
good. That's right. Use that to get
It's
those
good for
animals in.
animals. I don't know what it's like for people, but it's good for
But it's
animals.
good for animals. It is. But I think you're so right in that, veterinarians are very much drawn to the medicine part of it. That's their skill set. That's what they enjoy. But, even if you said, okay, if you want to be internal medicine specialist, but you still got to have yes out of your clients. And if you're talking over their head, if you're not watching their body language, if you're not picking up on cues that they're confused, they're going to say no. And you don't get to do all the cool things that you know how to do because they've got to say yes. They've got to want to pay for it, and they've got to be willing to pay for it. So even no matter what you're doing in life, you need to be able to communicate well and understand those verbal cues from others. So Kate, you and I met, obviously, we're networking. Tell me what networking helped you in your career decision and getting where you are today.
Oh my gosh. The very best networking I have ever done and still will do is through AHA. And you mentioned your conference families. Yeah, there are so many people I miss. I don't get to see because we haven't had our conferences this year. And it's just not the same. It's nice to talk to you this way, but it's not the same as if we
Not-
could actually sit down and have a real conversation. Um, but be around people, network with people you would like to be like. So I want to be like Debbie when I grow up. That would be really cool. So, and then the people I work with now, I like to be a lot like those guys when I grow up. When I started with AHA, there were a number of people that, first I met through committees and then through board service. And it's like, wow, I'm interacting with some really, top-notch folks. And I want to be like them when I grow up. One day I might grow up. um, and so be around people who inspire you. I think that's the networking. So AHA has been that. And then it has opened doors, because once you know one person, they'll say, do you know this other person? And you should meet, so-and-so, because you guys have a lot in common. And that's how it grows. It's an organic thing. It's not a, I will go and network today. It doesn't work like that. Or you hear somebody discussing something and, and if you go back to the CE part of it, it's like, oh, I really like that lecturer. Oh, really? I didn't realize and you go see, and then you meet somebody sitting next to you who's, they become your best friend because you have similar things in the lecture hall. So networking, yes, go around, be around people who inspire you. That's one of my, so even if they're a little intimidating, don't worry about it. Just go for it.
I agree with that so much. I have people who occasionally will come up after a lecture and I give them a talk, and they'll come up and talk to me. And then other people, you can see they'd really like to come up. They're kind of hanging back. But I've always enjoyed meeting people, and I'm happy to give people information about the class that we're talking about, and in deep information. If I don't have another lecture coming up, I'll just sit down with folks and talk to them. But I love what you said about talking to people who intimidate you, because in veterinary medicine, of all the people that I have met, I have, and I've had other people say this, I've met very few people who are jerks. Most people are
Right.
very kind and willing and able to help and introduce you to the people that you need to know. And it certainly has, boded well for me in my career. One of the things I love about being a member of Vet Partners, and this is an association that Kate was a member of too, is that there are people there that I used to read their articles when I was managing, and these were the lifelines. This is the only information. We didn't have textbooks, and I'm a CVPM, and I'll often have young practice managers goes, where can I go to school to be a CVPM? And I went, you can't. It is truly the school of hard knocks. There are places that you can get the educational background, but to be a CVPM, you have to actively have managed a hospital and follow, these criteria and meet these qualifications. But the people that I met when I came into Vet Partners were so intimidating to me, because I had watched them lecture, I'd read their books, I'd read their articles. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to come up. But you know what? I just said, I'm just going to go talk to them. And they're great. They're just great people. And I laugh because I sit on the board with Karen Felstead, and I went, you're freaking Karen Felstead, right? It's like, I guess I am. So, but Karen's great. And we've had some really fun, good conversations, and some of the other people that, I've just been reading their stuff for years. So I don't want people to be afraid to come up to me or to come up to almost anybody who's up there on that speaker podium, because they're there to help. They really are. They have things that they believe in and they have deep knowledge of, and they're more than happy to share. They're very generous. I think they're all very generous in sharing. But that's so much of how my career has developed, certainly from people lifting me up. not from a lot of the work. I mean, I'm willing to work hard, but I'm also willing to be open to opportunities when people say, "Hey, how'd you like to try to do that?" and take a risk and go, "Yeah, why not? Why not me? Why?" I
Mhm.
think that's another thing too, is that people, and of course we all know this as being women, we think, oh, well, we don't have all the qualifications that check all these boxes off,
Right,
right? So I'll have
right.
to wait until I get more education or more qualifications to do that, instead of going, what the heck? I'll try
Right.
it. And
Yeah.
if I fail, so what? I just learn from failure. That's how we learn best, is from failure. And there's no harm in trying. There's only harm in not. One of the things I teach my students all the time when offering services to clinics, I mean, in the clinic to clients, is the answer is always no if you don't ask the question. So ask,
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
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 Uh, so, Kate, what advice would you give somebody who's facing a big career decision? I mean, obviously yours was dumped on you by your partner going,
Yeah.
guess
The
what?
owner, the solo ownership one was, yes.
But there were other big ones that you made. I mean, I think being out of school and thinking about going back to school, I think that would be a really big decision, because you think, oh,
That one was hard.
that
Yeah.
would be hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Completely changing the career path. So, the best thing is go with your gut. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but if you sit back and you go, well, I've got these two options, which one feels better? And you might go, well, this one doesn't seem to be the practical one, but it feels right. And if you're willing to work at it, okay, now it doesn't make sense to say that one feels better, but you're just going to sit back and hope things come, good things come. Um, like it is frustrating if somebody goes through vet school because it just was what they thought they wanted to do, and then they get out of school and decide not to practice, and then they're distressed because they have loans. Like, well, you got yourself into that one. so, so you
Let's
need
make
to
a
have
better
a
decision on the front
strategy.
end. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you need to have a strategy, but if you have a strategy, um, if you have a plan, if you can create a plan that is uh, it is a long game plan. It needs to be more than just a tomorrow plan. Then go with your gut.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
So
That
go,
that looking at
yeah.
the long game. And I think that's where uh, many young veterinarians, they look at where they are right now. And this has been a hard year. This has been
Yeah.
a frustrating, exhausting year. Um, One of my friends did a burnout survey for his dissertation for his PhD, and it was
Mm,
on burnout in veterinary medicine. And I don't think the results were not exactly what I expected, because people weren't burnt out because they didn't enjoy the work. They were just knee walking exhausted from having so
mm-hmm.
much work. And
Right.
there was no break, there was no break in sight. So, you and I would agree that a great deal of the problems of our profession have to do with poor management and poor boundaries. And
Oh, boundaries. Oh,
oh,
boundaries are huge.
yes, because I really think so many times we set ourselves on fire. If we're burnout, we set ourselves on fire because we allow people to take advantage of us. We allow clients to behave badly. We
Mm-hmm.
don't market appropriately and set our brand to the clients that we're willing to serve. And then
Right.
when you have the wrong client in there, they're never going to be happy because they're the wrong person, for you.
Mm-hmm.
They should go to the old guy who's practicing
Yeah.
1985 medicine, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not yours. Um, but the other decision that you made that I want to talk about, because I think a lot of times veterinarians get into practice and maybe realize that everyday practice is not for them, but there are other opportunities if you, like, you have paid your dues, you've been a practice owner, you have a depth of experience, and you've changed careers again, sold your practice, and
Mm-hmm.
then now you're working for a consulting company. So when you made that decision, what were your thought processes? I mean, you weren't just, you sold your practice. I mean, you could have done nothing if you wanted to.
Yeah, and that's true. Um, and when I mentioned that to my mother, she laughed out loud. She was like, yeah, you do nothing. So anyway, yeah, because it's just not who I am. Yeah, so that was good. So that was another long game decision, though. I knew, I think a lot of good things take about 4 years, 3 to 4 years to plan. Um, and I just sort of look at that as like vet school. It takes 4 years. You know, the first year you're getting your feet under you, and by the time you've got 4 years, you're ready to do it. And so I knew that I wanted to transition out. I did not know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to transition out. So that was the long game. And then the next step was, well, then that means I need to find somebody, because my hospital was a legacy. I mean, could I have sold corporate? Probably. Did I want to? No, because that's not who my hospital was. That's not who I was. And I wanted to be able to drive by and still go, yeah, I'm proud of that place. Um, and so then looking for potential partner. Um, and it took a couple tries to find the right person. But Jimmy was definitely the right person. And so, you know, he knew he wanted to eventually be an owner, not long down the road. And I knew I wanted to transition out, and I wanted to mentor somebody to carry on the legacy of the hospital. So, you know, bringing him on, deciding that, yes, we were a good match, uh, making him a junior partner by the time he was a year out of school, which was very cool. And then turning more and more of the management part over, you know, to him, you know, and he got to look at those scary P&Ls and
Yeah.
and tell me what they were all about, which was kind of cool. Little scary, little hard to let go, but it was scary. Um, and then as time got closer, because we set up the buyout so that you know, he bought in, and then 2 years later he was to buy the rest of my shares. And as it got closer, I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? And that's when my mom laughed and said, you do nothing. So trying to figure that out, I'm like, okay, where's my passion? And I realized I wanted to do something that had to be teaching oriented. And I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. You know, we're close to NC State, so academia was certainly a possibility. Industry, we're in the Research Triangle area, so there's a lot of opportunities for that. And I looked very hard at industry options. Then there was some more networking involved as far as that went, in order to see where that was going to go. And then because of, and this goes back to networking again, because of my relationships that I'd built with AHA, I knew about the folks in Blue Heron, and I knew about their model with consulting. And you know, reached out to say, is there something there that would fit with, you know, teaching? And the more we talked, so I guess that's networking again. The more we talked, the more it was a good fit. And I started out part-time while I was still practicing. So, and it got more and more fun. And so then I went to probably 3/4 time consulting and only a little bit at the hospital. Then I sold the hospital, and then I just did some relief at the hospital. And as of I think it was October of last year when I said, okay, I'm going to hang up my stethoscope. And so I'm full time now. So it's, at least for me, it was not a switch. Okay. Unless you want to call it a dimmer switch, because it went
Kind of a
until I got to
gradual
full.
slide into
Yes.
new work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Into new work. So
Mhm.
it was a test it out first, make sure it's right. And it's fun. It's just fun. I mean, I'm veterinary medicine was fun. It was definitely the right thing for me to do when I switched from graduate school. And consulting has definitely been the right thing to do beyond that. So
Yep. And there's the
you're
dogs.
the dogs. And there's the
We,
dogs.
we knew that they were going to.
And there's the big dog.
The big
Sorry.
dog. It's okay. We won't worry about it. Like I said, this is,
Okay.
I told you if we didn't have a conversation with dogs barking in the background, we wouldn't feel at home. So we have to have dogs barking in the background. Okay.
Hey.
You might, let's see, this might even make the Zoom news because let's see, all the cats walking back and forth on people's screens.
Right.
Yeah, at least we don't have a cat butt in our face, because that I've seen that too.
Yeah, no kitty butts this time.
No kitty butts this time. So Kate, any final words of wisdom that you would offer to our guest about, just kind of life in general? You've done a lot of stuff, seen a lot of stuff, seen a lot of changes in veterinary medicine. What would you offer for people who, it's particularly for people who are unhappy where they are? And because I see a lot of people in a lot of my Facebook feeds and social media going, I'm just miserable, my boss is a jerk, and but they're afraid to leave. So what would you say to those people who are unhappy?
Be bold. Be bold. Just a phrase that somebody taught me, gosh, a long time ago, was feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mhm.
And there were times, as an owner, when you're in financial worries and stuff, it's like, okay, deep breath. And you have to sort of look at, well, what the other thing is to ask yourself, because what people usually ask for when they're afraid is they go down the rabbit hole of, I'm afraid I'm going to leave my job, and I'll never find another one, and I'm going to end up as a homeless person with a grocery cart and my cat, and switch it around and ask yourself, what if it's great? What would it be like if I switch and it's great? I mean, I got a jerk for a boss now. What if I start looking for a job and then I have a place to jump? So, and you know more about what it is you're looking for, and you can be selective. If you're a veterinarian right now, you can work anywhere you want. I have hospital practices from Florida to Hawaii right now that need doctors.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who wants to talk to me, we've got hospitals who need doctors.
I wish I knew somebody. One of my practices looked for a year and a half. Of course, they're also very selective, because they're 100% fear free. So it had to be somebody who drank the Kool-Aid, and they're also Sophia Yin Gold certified. So it was very much behavior focused. But finding that right fit is for both sides. You want your associates to be happy. You want you to be happy with your associates. Screening those people appropriately for a good fit. But you're right, the world is your oyster if you're a veterinarian or a veterinary technician.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
There are about 5 to 10 openings for techs. 5 openings for every one available veterinarian, according to the AVMA recent economic summit. So you can't, don't let fear hold you back.
One of my feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah.
One of my favorite movies is a Will Smith movie, Independence Day, and he's like, fear's not real, danger is real. And there's a difference between danger and fear, because fear is what our mind tells us, And danger is
Ah,
actually physical pain that's, going to happen because of something. But fear is something that we build the story. So we have to watch the story that we tell
okay.
ourselves. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kate, anything that you would like to say about yourself or your company, Blue Heron, favorite book that you want to share, a favorite quote that motivates you? Um,
Uh, well, let's see. I'll start with a book and then I'd like to tell a little bit about Blue Heron. So let me
yes,
see my book. Oh,
we love
sorry,
books.
I
I like to
wasn't
look at
prepared
people's
with that.
show. Yeah, I like to look at
This
the,
is, do you know this one?
let's see.
Multipliers.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Multipliers by Liz Wiseman
Okay.
is an amazing book. Its subtitle is How the Best Leaders Make Everybody Smarter.
I like it.
And it is about empowering people and your team. And it was probably one of the best practical business books I think I've read in a long time. So that one is a good one for folks. So I got no skin in that game other than I think it's a great book. And then yeah, Blue Heron. So Blue Heron, we're a little different. We operate differently than folks like you. I mean, you can go in as a single person and look directly at the practice. And with our group, we take a veterinarian and a business person, and we go into practices and do everything from teaching you how to look at that scary P&L to getting your cost of goods sold down into a number that it should be, and knowing what that number should be. So, to working on those really sticky HR and communication issues. So, and because we have a bench of coaches, we have a wide bunch of expertise to share with folks. So, and we, just like you, we've worked with folks from right out of school to, and we do a lot with VBMA and in the schools, to folks who are like transitioning out. People want to sell their practice. So making the practice value what it should be. So whatever your pain point is, give us a call and we can do our best to help you. Do you have, I don't know how to share my contact information.
Well, we will post your information at the end of the podcast on the little blurb at the end. So I'll get that information from you, and people will be able to reach out and contact you. And of course, I'm sure they can contact you through the Blue Heron website also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And if anybody needs to know how to find you, they can ask me too. I can find you.
That's right, because you know everybody.
I know every single one of you just about. I think there's some younger ones on there I don't know, but for the core group, I absolutely know from the scratch. Before it existed, I think I knew them all. Mm-hmm. And highly recommend the group. If Chuck has even told me if I needed to borrow a veterinarian, I could borrow one of you. So.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
I'll borrow you, Kate.
Yeah. Well, we're not too far from each other, right?
No, we're not. We're not. And sometimes I get into these situations where I'm not a veterinarian, but I know stuff, but I don't have that DVM behind my name going, you shouldn't be doing that. I just would love to have a veterinarian sometimes that says this needs to stop, and I need some authority behind me. So
give me a call.
Give
me a call.
Yeah, I would love to.
If I can help, that would be fun.
It would be fun. It would be fun. Well, thank you again for agreeing to be on the program. And I super appreciate your time and your career path. I think that you absolutely can show veterinarians that there's always room for change. There's always something new around the corner, as long as you are bold and brave.
There you go.
And just, know that you can. I mean, just know that you have the chops for it, because I think if you can get through vet school, by God, you can do anything.
You can do lots and lots of stuff. That's for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. And to the audience, I so appreciate your time, and we'll be back every week with a new guest. to talk about how they navigated their bend.